this is America's sports writer, America's the face of a face of a lot of things. Face of Detroit Lions on Sports Illustrated, which we were just reading and reacting to. The franchise, the DOC, spam
his
the doc
so
emotes, spam the doc emojis, only available to members, by the way. Let's bring him in, Mr. John Maakaron. Welcome in, John. How you doing?
What's up, fellas? What's happening? It's a great Wednesday. Look, I want to apologize for the male gender. I mean, baseball has never been the same since the sideline reporter got those digits. The world has ended. Men being men. Man, listen, I want to humbly apologize for the toxic masculinity you're going to listen to for the next hour. But guess what? The DOC's here. Let's go.
Yeah. Doc came in hot, man. Came in hot, Doc.
Listen, I am the definition of toxic masculinity. Let's enjoy guys being guys. And listen, a great book that's right over my shoulder. I want to get it right now, real fast. I'm going to take 3 seconds. All right.
Oh,
I believe we get to
2, 3.
That's one hell of a shuttle time,
will change your guys' life. All right. And it happened. It literally happened well before this beautiful, well-spoken author wrote it. Adam Carolla wrote a book, and he wrote it in let's see when he wrote
50 years we'll all be chicks.
In 50 years, we'll all be chicks. He wrote this maybe 15 years ago, and he said there is an attack on masculinity, that everybody wants guys to start acting like women. And he's like, guys used to do so many different things. He's like, I can't believe I walk around town and guys can't change tires anymore. And he's just listen, the founding godfather of true podcasting. And it happened now. People don't want guys to be guys. What are you talking about? A baseball guy, a sideline reporter having some fun, getting some digits is taking flack from who? Jealousy. Because, we can't do the same thing. No, you can't do the same thing because there's men and there's women, and women don't do those kind of things on the air. Men, you can have a little fun with it. That's just the way it is. But it's a great book. Listen, get some perspective before you opine on these things. But, it didn't take 50 years for us to be chicks.
No, you're absolutely correct about everything you said, Doc. And actually, speaking of, the other side, just real quick, Kay Adams did it to Shams, and we laughed.
Yeah.
So
Kay Adams flirted with Shams repeatedly, and no one had a problem with it. So
it's not that serious.
It's not a big deal. Stop being soft. It's fine.
We're talking
to adults.
Not that big a deal.
Yeah, Jesus, get over it. People just love complaining and it's just how it is. But Doc, that's why I love it. What an entrance by a legend. Doc, let me pick your brain though, because we have I'm going to bring up an article actually later that you put out yesterday, and I think it'll be a good conversation. But I'll start with now 8 days until the NFL draft. How do you feel today, Doc, as we get closer? Just your overall excitement, maybe some expectations, how you think it's going to go down. I know you're going to have a busy day for Sports Illustrated, but what are you feeling 8 days now away from the NFL draft?
Yeah, no doubt. I can't wait to get the poll real fast of you guys. I cannot change a tire. That's how embarrassing it is for me. I'm not handy, but it's because I am left-brained or whatever. I'm creative. I'm more of a creator, more of a comedian, talker type, but it's funny as hell that I can't hammer a nail and without hurting my thumb or hurting myself. So that's real fun to make fun of yourself that I'm not real handy. But listen, you know what I am good at? I am good at talking about the Detroit Lions, and I'm loving it 1 week out. The Detroit Lions are entering one of their biggest drafts in their franchise history. I think that everything's in place. The one thing that you can feel comfortable with Brad Holmes is that he maneuvers the draft in a way where that they got 3 guys at every position that they know can potentially – there have to be 20 guys that fit what this Detroit football team is all about in terms of grit, loving football, talent. So this is Brad Holmes' Super Bowl. This is his time to shine. And he steps up and he's able to, yes, he's had some misses, but by and large, he stacked this football team with some young talent. And it's a big draft because I do think that the next wave of the Detroit Lions starts with the 2025 draft. So it's very key that you're going to start, and like some great reporters have started to talk about, you're going to start to need to replace some of these older vets that have been leaders And with the money situation and the cap coming due with all these great players needing some high contract, it's very important that, several of these 7 picks hit and are able to develop in this system. But by and large, Brad Holmes has over a 50% hit rate. So it's pretty good. I'm excited because the fan base, I think, now is ready to focus. The offseason, has been light in free agency. Now the fans are ready to tune into who this team picks, and it's an exciting time for sure.
Yeah, hey, I want to throw out there, Doc, you brought up kind of the new this draft is going to be kind of that next massive draft class to keep this Lions team relevant over the next 5-6 years. The big kind of thing that came out about that was the Jameson Williams news. And, there was reporters and people putting out there like, hey, keep an eye on this, that this is a real option that they might end up doing. Where do you stand on that? Do you see Jameson Williams getting moved at all this offseason? And then 2, do you see them kind of taking a wide receiver, whether they move JMO or not? Do you see them going wide receiver in the first 2 rounds or even the first round with Matthew Golden as reported?
Yeah, no, listen, there's some great reporters that, I have no problem with Mike reflecting that.
That was a great job.
Listen. There's ways of potentially doing that maybe differently, but I would look at it and I would be surprised if the Lions traded Jameson Williams. I mean, so the headline is a little bit off in regards to, I think we've written it and talked about it. I talked about it with Jeff. I said, hey, do we think that the Lions could take an offensive skill position? And that's from Dan Campbell saying we need to get younger. That's just being smart, knowing that you have a wide receiver on the roster making $30 million a year. But guys, listen, your number one position on this football team is quarterback, and Jared Goff needs more weapons, not less. So what some reporters fail to do is they look at the singular idea of, the Lions brought in Matthew Golden. That means they're going to trade Jameson Williams. Well, there's so many layers that are beyond that. You could write that, but realistically, I don't think it's going to happen because you have the 5th-year option. So at step 1, Brad Holmes said, we're going to go ahead and pick that up. Now, what would it take to trade Jameson Williams? I mean, how far do you want to move up? The talent level in this draft doesn't kind of showcase that. You can get better edge rushers in later rounds too. You can get talented receivers in later rounds. There's some good ones. So I just think that what would that do to the locker room? What signal would that send to Jared Goff? What signal would that send to Amon-Ra St. Brown? You're not going to trade Jameson Williams. So it's an interesting thing to talk about and speculate about. But I think that everybody in the chat and all you guys would be quite shocked if the Detroit Lions were to trade Jameson Williams because you have him under control. And for $15 million this year, that's a relatively inexpensive cost for $15 million next year. His cap hit this year is so favorable, it's less than $6 million. So I just think that, look, from one guy that does the same job that he does, he did a good job of sparking interest and sparking debate and discussion realistically about Jameson's future, but he's not getting traded this year. The question mark is going to be this offseason, not the one that's just going on. Next year, I think is more realistic to talk about Jameson Williams' future. You need him this year in a Super Bowl window. So Mike did a good job of sparking debate, but I'll say this. I'm not going to throw shots at Mike, but he also is heavy on the speculation. And if you read him, you'd be a very sad reader because he told you guys that Ben Johnson was going to not leave. And he was definitely he definitely champions a lot of wrong positions in his work. So it's interesting. It's fun, but he does have quite the bit of the miss rate as well.
Hey, Doc, something that I've been finding kind of interesting, especially recently, the Lions, again, they hold the 28th overall pick right now, and then they got the 60th in the second round. They've been interviewing a lot of defensive line, brought in Derek Harmon, Tyleik Williams. They've met with Darius Alexander when I believe was at the combine, could have been like a top 30 visit, whatever. They've met with Darius Alexander, Deion Walker. When do you think they approach the interior of the defensive line? Do you think it's going to be early on, or do you think they have a guy that they're sitting back in the middle of the draft to go and get?
Yeah, no, the betting favorites, I did a story maybe last week as well regarding what positions they should go with each round. To me, it's my opinion that they could go defensive tackle in the second round, might be a great spot after you go and target an edge rusher or an offensive lineman. I do think it's going to be early. There's some really good ones, and there's opportunities that people really do like along the interior. I love the fact that people are looking at it realistically and saying, okay, DJ Reader's future in town is in question because he's getting a little bit older, Aleem McNeil. But there's definitely some good defensive tackles that could fit the Lions. A lot of people are looking at Walter Nolan, who got up 27 on the bench. Derek Harmon, I do think, is a potential fit for the Detroit Lions. Definitely Brad Holmes has seen a lot of Oregon and what they can do. If you're looking a little bit later, you could look at a couple guys down south. I've watched film on TJ Sanders and Joshua Farmer. Sanders out of South Carolina, 6'4", about 300 pounds. I think that, he's a guy that has been able to be an powerful interior defender, can be on the field 3 downs. Joshua Farmer from Florida State. I think that his size is definitely unique at 6'3", 305, 310 pounds, and can be, I think the key that we're all going to look for, and if you guys watch film and you look at these talented players, the key that you're going to want is somebody that can stuff the run, because I do think that they're going to collapse the pocket and have opportunities on the edges. So there's opportunities galore, and people will look at the idea of some, maybe the guys from Michigan as well. But it's a good class to kind of restock. And then plus, you do have Roy Lopez, but I do think competition at that spot will definitely be key. And it's not coming from Broderick Martin, no doubt. I just think that you go in the draft and you find some talent. I do think that, if you read the other story that kind of got some buzz on our site, 4 Lions that potentially might not be here, Broderick's on that list.
Yeah, Doc, I asked you this before weeks ago, but now that we're, again, 8 days away, Christian put out the article for questions, important, which I think they all should be asked, to be fair. They're all great questions. One of them was more likely moving up or moving back. We had an overreaction show on Monday, and I said overreaction. I don't think the Lions will pick in the first round. And Boone said they'll have 2 first-round picks. They'll trade back into the first round. Where are you at? What's a feeling you have right now?
Mm-hmm. And the reason why, which is always good, when you see those kind of what questions are asked, I'll let your people in the chat know early. It's going to be Thursday morning, right at the start of the day, I can't tell you the specific time, but let's say most Americans work from this time to this time. That first starting time is going to be when Brad Holmes talks on Thursday morning. So get ready. I will be there early, and Brad will answer questions. And if you guys have some questions you want to throw out there that I should ask Brad directly, those are things that are going to be asked. His thoughts about the class, thoughts about Jameson Williams, thoughts about the spot. Here's the problem that kind of pokes holes at that theory of 2 first-round picks. It always makes sense, but here's the problem. When you're up against the cap and you got to pay people, it lends the opportunity. Then you get that 5th-year option where you got to pay a hefty price. And those first-round picks, those tend to kind of be the more heftier contracts. So I'm more leaning, my opinion, humbly, is that they stay at 28 or they trade out. You have so many players you got to pay. The bill's coming due. And I'm of the opinion you are going to pay Jameson Williams. I mean, the man fits. I mean, he's talented. He's speedy. He is a guy that if they haven't moved on from him from all the suspensions and the off the field stuff, he's one of those guys. And it's just one of those deals where I think Lions fans kind of forget that. And it was always taught to me by scouts. And I worked with a great one, a hilarious one. And he said, look, draft picks are they're just those employees that the boss love a little bit more than the undrafted. The first round picks, the second round picks, they get more leeway. They get more chances. Why? Because they have more talent. And I think Jameson's going to get probably starting, maybe not this year, but next year he'll get like 4 years, 80 million starting. And you go from there. You look at this football team, there's a lot of mouths to feed, and more first round picks make it tough. So I'm of the opinion, if you are as good as Brad Holmes is, you could get a talented wideout, talented cornerback, talented defensive ends later in the draft. So I'm not worried where they pick. Would it be anticlimactic? It would be to sit there all day, and then at 28 they trade out. But I look at it, and the odds-on favorite to me is they stay at 28, and option B is to trade out.
Doc, I just want to ask, because and this is just kind of because I do think that there's a world that they're a little more aggressive than people think, just based off of, and I think it's to the point that you're making as well. These contracts are going to have to be paid, and say hypothetically, they don't pay Jameson Williams, and they maybe move on from one other guy. You do that because you want to be able to bring in some, maybe some more first or second round guys with that talent. Something you said earlier in the show, which kind of brings me back to this feels like one of those drafts that's going to kind of keep them moving forward. Like one of their first couple where they, you need to get guys in this draft, but to kind of keep pushing forward in contending. That's kind of my thought process. And can I just see why, like, is there a reason behind why you don't think they would based off of those theories? Because if you line those theories up to where if they walk away from JMO, they're going to want to add more draft picks to be able to replace them early on. Why not trade up and pay a first round guy, pay a second round guy on rookie deals instead of these guys on, you're going to have to sign 30, 35 million, 25 million. And I'm just trying to get clarification on why kind of on that side you would think that.
Yeah, no, you look at it from the perspective of who they've done the research on, and Jameson Williams has elite talent that it's hard to say that there's better players. There could be more affordable players, but again, that takes time. It took JMO almost a full year working with Jared Goff to develop that timing. John Morton's system's not easy to learn, and John Morton's going to be yelling at these young rookies. I've seen up front, up close at these practices where these young wide receivers sometimes struggle to line up properly, to be in the right spot. And so I look at it like this football team is, and I know conceptually people understand the value of the draft, but you also have to look at the starters that they're going to try to overcome. It's going to be pretty tough. Tim Patrick, Amon-Ra St. Brown, and Jameson Williams, that's pretty formidable to try and crack to get some reps. And I look at it and I say, yes, there are opportunities to be aggressive in drafts, but this draft class is as a whole not viewed collectively as even as good as last year's. And so it's a weaker class, and you don't want to, just because you're in that spot, just take somebody. You want to have somebody that's a fit. You want to have somebody that can be in that spot. And I just don't think that you need to, with the level of talent that you're going to get at 15 versus what you can get in the second and third round and get some value and pay lesser price. So I just think that Jameson Williams and some of the talent you have still are still better. Like, look, I do think that the three positions you're going to look at, offensive line, linebacker, and safety, you're going to start to potentially look at replacements for maybe a Brian Branch if he leaves, a Graham Glasgow, and an Alex Anzalone. Those are going to be people, but at this point, not in 2025, in the coming years. So I just think that this year, the Lions value who's on the roster probably way, way more than any draft pick. And I know that that first pick at 28, everybody wants to be an impactful right now starter, but that might not be the case. The case may be, and it sucks because you just wish that there was, this is the byproduct of being a great football team, is that you're picking guys later that, may not have the impact right now. They may be guys that have impact in 26, 27, because I still think depth. I still think going into training camp, when I go out there and report live from Allen Park, I think defensive end one is Aiden, defensive end on the other side is Marcus Davenport. And the young guy coming in, if they take him at 28, is still going to have to work hard to get on the field. And I just think too that, draft picks are, even though Brad Holmes is great, they're still a crapshoot. You know what you have. Guys, remember, the Lions roster is pretty good, 15-win team, and the draft picks are going to supplement that, provide competition, and fill needs. But at this point in time, there's really only a couple where you actually need maybe someone quicker, and that's probably more. That's why I'm thinking, teasing a little bit, my final mock draft. We're going to have a whole bunch of them coming out at Lions on SI next week, but my final one will lean probably more toward an offensive lineman at 28.
Yeah, literally, Doc, my question was just going to be, can you give me your prediction for 28? If you want them to stay, that's your plan A. Right now, Doc, if we're doing a mock draft and your guy fell to you, who would that be?
Yeah, no doubt. I want an offensive lineman. I think that this football team operates in a manner. The last thing I saw, all right, guys, and last thing you all saw was Jared Goff on his ass, getting rocked because the offensive line didn't play good enough. So it lends to me that you love Alabama. I love Tyler Booker. 6'5", 321, 2-year starter, terrific size. That's a solid guy. Gray Zabel, lot of talent, 6'6", 312. Versatile, can play literally. The scouts and the film shows that guy can play every position along the offensive line. Last year, 90.4 PFF grade, 16 starts at left tackle, 17 at right, and 4 at left guard the last couple years. So you have opportunities to compete. You still got Donovan Jackson, who can make some noise as well. Later on, you may look at from Georgia or Arizona. People are looking at linemen that are very talented. But to me, I look at it like your biggest investment. And so most likely, as I'm spitballing with you guys, it's going to be, to me, Tyler Booker or Gray Zabel will be my final selection. Brad Holmes said, we want to make sure that garden of offensive line stays strong. And there's a little bit of weakness in that offensive line. So yes, there are edge rushers. You need that. So I would go potentially, my next mock draft will probably go offensive line, edge rusher, defensive tackle in the first 3 picks, because guess what? Jared needs as much help along that offensive line as humanly possible. You may need a backup center to also be out there if Frank Ragnow leaves. So it's important. And especially when your biggest investment is Jared Goff and $50 million, I'm of the opinion you protect that. And you still, and when Brad said, hey, we still got Aiden Hutchinson, I do believe that they believe if Marcus Davenport is better right now than any rookie will be. It stinks because I just wish that, they were still in the market for Trey Hendrickson or Myles Garrett or another big name proven guy to go for it. But the tea leaves say they're not.
Doc, like you just mentioned, they re-signed Marcus Davenport. Maybe not a move that Lions fans exactly wanted, but looking at Amik Robertson last year, terrible end of the season with the broken arm. But before that, especially at the end of the season, he finished very strong. What do you think the future is with Amik? Because we know Brad loves re-signing their own. But when it comes to free agent, there's definitely more of a tendency to walk. And Amik does command a little bit of money. I don't think he's going to get paid Tre'Davious Ward money like he got paid this season, or DJ Reed. But Amik could definitely have a little bit of leverage to get teams to pay him. Do you think he's somebody that in the future he'll still be hanging around in Detroit, or do you think when his contract ends, they'll kind of have to part ways?
Yeah, no, it's going to really depend on how he does this year. I think that first year was a great indication. What a value, right? I think 2 years, $9 million or so. What a value in regards to what you get. A true competitor, somebody that is outgoing and passionate, can play nickel, can be outside for you, and can lock down if needed. A top guy. This is a guy that wants to prove he's a top guy. He wants to be an outside corner. It's going to be tough. I love the competition. I can't wait to see it between him, DJ Reed, and Terrion Arnold. But I love the fact that he has a chance to be the starting nickel cornerback. You want him on the field. He's an emotional leader, gritty guy. He's a guy that probably is going to make every player's job is to make the general manager's job a nightmare. And Amik Robertson will do that because he's going to command a contract that is going to be worthy of his talents, probably north of $10 million a year. And he may just have to be a casualty. That's why I do think there's going to be a cornerback drafted in this year. And that's why I was, the headline was Lions surprisingly take Hairston in Dane Brugler's mock draft. But I would not be surprised if the Lions target a cornerback, because Carlton Davis was a player that was really solid and you let him go. DJ Reed is a good player, a good replacement. I do like what he brings to the table, but I do think you cannot have enough cornerbacks that can come in and do the job. And a guy that just really everybody likes, that kind of is a Brad Holmes guy because of coming off the ACL, but Siobhan Revell is interesting. 6'2", 194. He fits my criteria. Big, long, athletic. I think that he's a guy early on that can come in and be a special teams guy and help out and do some things. But that's a guy that I just really think is a Lion. And a lot of people like Trey Amos as well from Mississippi at 6'1". But to me, my guy, my draft crush at the cornerback spot is Siobhan Revell. I like his tape. I liked watching it. I like all the things I'm reading. And, it stinks that he's coming off of the ACL, but he's ready. He's a go for the offseason program. So I'm excited. This last 3 weeks have been fun for me, watching tape, digging in, and then reading a lot of the in-depth pieces. There's more than the big one out there. There's more than the beast. A lot of draft analysts put out some good rankings, some good content that if you spend a couple hours reading, you can get down the rabbit hole. But to me, my defensive back crush is Siobhan Ravel.
Well, Siobhan Ravel, ACL tear. Maybe it's a good thing, Doc. You never know.
I would lose my fucking mind.
In a bad way, you wouldn't like that? You wouldn't like that? Or
Doc, no.
Where, at what pick, Doc?
No, second round, day 2. Opportunities there. I don't know where he's going to go. Maybe projected top 45 pick. Maybe it'll be tough for them there at 60, but we'll see. The draft, as we all think of those rankings, there's always variations of where people are expecting to go. I don't think he'll be a first round pick, but Hairston's also interesting. When you read what Dane Brugler wrote about him, very interesting opportunity, but I don't think they're going to go cornerback in the first round.
I've said it before. I'll break my laptop in half if they pick a corner.
Guys, remember, there's more than one pick. If Brad has earned the trust, if he makes a pick at wide out, I mean, the only 2 positions you would probably deserve really justifiably would be tight end or running back. Your
corner in the first round, Doc. After you introduce first round last,
if they find a guy that they believe, listen. There are more picks than the day 1 pick. If they target a guy that they feel that can help this defense, then he's a guy that's probably has a chance. Now, I would see the skepticism. I would hear it from you guys because of the fact that, Terrion took a while to develop. It does take time to develop, but Brad Holmes has earned the credibility that if he targets a position that it is a position of need and they find the guy that they feel is the best at that spot, I'm okay with it. My only overreaction would be an offensive skill position, tight end, running back. I'd be like, I don't know. But listen, a cornerback in the first round could compete opposite of DJ Reed, could be an impact guy. Hey, remember, guys, Quinyon Mitchell and Cooper DeJean made plays in the playoffs. So if the man Brad Holmes decides that's the spot, you should give him the benefit of the doubt, in my opinion. Well, but I think you can do it. I don't think that's how the board is going to fall.
That's my biggest argument when people bring up, because the Lions are a great team. Okay, we all agree. But people say, well, your first 2 picks. I mean, we have to stop acting like this is the 3 years ago Lions. Like these guys might not even play much or might not, play much at all. You have a great team. The Eagles had a great team, and a rookie had a pick 6, a second round pick in the Super Bowl. So I don't want to hear that. Like these picks are all important. It doesn't matter what round it is. If there's a spot where the player can play, trust me, on a biggest, you never know when that player will shine. Yeah, right. And there's question, and the chat was bringing up, and I want to bring it up just to ask your opinion. I saw Tyler, and I saw Mark Royal also brought up Taylor Decker, and Taylor, I think coming off the season he got some criticism. Again, there was games where he was fine, he was good. And then there were games where he struggled, and then he dealt with injury. So me and Booner were kind of on the same page with it. Klotzy's more thinking ahead and potentially replacing him. But for you, Doc, when you draft an offensive lineman, I'm assuming you're talking about, like you mentioned, Tyler Booker, a guard. Would there be any consideration, at least in your mind, that maybe they go out and draft a tackle, or do you kind of like maybe Giovanni Manu playing tackle? I mean, where are you at? Is that something that's on your mind, Taylor Decker's future and him getting paid in that left tackle spot for golf?
Yeah, a lot of options. That's why Gray Zabel probably is a big opportunity there to get him if he's available, because of the fact that he can play all the positions. But I think the leader in the clubhouse, plan-wise, would be probably draft an offensive lineman that can play, that could be the potential Taylor Decker replacement. But I think that by and large, if you just read the tea leaves, it makes sense that it's going to be probably at the right tackle spot, because the most valuable spot is the blind spot of the quarterback. So if that's going to be Jared Goff for the foreseeable future, and by all accounts, the next step for Jared is he's going to restructure his contract, which further ties the team to him for the next 3-4 years. You're going to get north of $40 million in cap relief. You're going to get a big chunk of money from restructuring Goff. But the only drawback is it makes sure that Goff is here for the next 4 or 5 years, which is not terrible. So if you do that, the next option would be to move Panay to the left side. That's a lock. He did it in college. He would be just fine, and Jared would sleep well at night. Now, the next question mark would be, okay, do you kick out Manu to the right side? Do you then have a player that you draft go out there and do it? So that's why I do think that Gray Zabel might end up being the name you hear getting read, because you want opportunities. I do think that 25 might be the opportunity where it's Taylor Decker's last year. And look, it's just the way it is. But if Taylor Decker can rebound, listen, he's going to be good for 2025. But yeah, he does have to have a much better year. I think, injuries always, as you get older, not overt, but nagging injuries can affect your play. And he had an up and down year. And I think he could be better than he was in 24. And I fully expect it. But I do think that, yeah, the succession plan is coming soon. And it starts with step one. That's mahogany. Step two is going to be the draft pick. And you get free agency to potentially fill holes next year as well. But yeah, offensive line, very key. And I think that is probably the position that we should have highlighted a little bit more than edge rusher, because yes, edge rusher is important, but keeping Jared Goff upright, supremely important, just based on the investment.
Fair enough. I do want to bring up something we're probably going to see maybe in the next week or so, Doc. Is Aiden Hutchinson, Kirby Joseph extension. Do you think those get done? We saw last year, the week of the draft, we saw Panay, Jared, and Amon-Ra all get done essentially in that 7-day span, it felt like, leading up to the NFL draft. Do you see Kirby and Hutch getting done by next Thursday?
Yeah, that's the as you said that, as you were talking about contracts, you just kind of foreshadow when things are going to start dropping. I foreshadow probably the news of Jameson's 5th-year extension dropping. I need it spaced out a little bit because the draft is coming, but I hope that the news breaks over the weekend as opposed to tomorrow, because tomorrow we have our slate of content that we want to write about, including Brad Holmes and what he says. But listen, those kind of deals where you're going north of $20 million, and by all accounts, Kirby's going to be the highest paid. It's going to take time. And I do think that he's going to have opportunities to probably take his time to negotiate it. There's fine points. I don't know. I think that this opportunity might take its time to maybe happen in regards to the offseason program starts. You get rookie mini camp. I would say by training camp, I would start to maybe project that it happens. Could be sooner, but these deals, I expect Kirby Joseph to get $22 million north of that per year, and he'll be the highest paid, and Aiden will get 40. And I do think that those kind of deals will get done. The timing is always going to be unique, right? Because some have been right like around this time, some have been around the time of training camp. So it's going to be fun to see the timing of when it does take place. But listen, it's a good problem to have. If you're Kirby Joseph, I think that if you see him out there hunting deer and having a good time, I don't think he's worried about his contract. I think he knows what he's put on tape, and we'll actually get more clarity tomorrow. I'm sure someone might ask, how close are you to agreements? But Brad doesn't really like to talk about it too much in terms of he always likes to keep that kind of stuff in house. But it's just speculating at this point in time, because that's one thing that the agents don't like talking about is how they're negotiating with the Lions. They keep that super tight-lipped, and I foreshadow that once those guys ink their names, to the second that they ink and agree to a contract, that news will come out, and it'll be good news. And I do think that priority one, I think the order will be Kirby first, then Aiden, because Aiden's going to command double what Kirby does.
Yeah, I agree with you, Doc. Kirby and Aiden Hutchinson, they need to be paid immediately, ASAP if you can, but somebody who's going to be paid, in my opinion, not due yet, but Sam Laporta. When you look at what happened to Sam Laporta last year, he was banged up, especially in the beginning of the season, finished pretty strong, but he still finished with 10 touchdowns. But you could watch Sam Laporta and tell, hey, he's not healthy. What do you think the chemistry is going to be between Laporta and John Moore and the new offensive coordinator? Do you think Sam Laporta is going to be on that same streak that he was before as far as just a consistent target? Or do you think that maybe his production could drop a little bit given a different type of system?
Yeah, no, I was generally surprised. Yes, he was dealing with injury. It was an interesting second year, not the one that we expected, right? We expect him to kind of take a big leap. Usually you see the talent, no bigger improvement than from year 2 to year their offseason after their rookie year. It didn't happen because of injury. And I think the offense went a different direction because Jahmyr Gibbs emerged. But I think one of the things that if you gave Ben Johnson some cocktails and said, hey, what's one regret you have? I think he'd say, I didn't put Sam Laporta in the best position in 2024. I think this year, if you're wise, if you're John Morton, the quarterback's best friend is the tight end. And that guy does not need to be taking the brunt of the blocking. And I know that Dan Campbell and the offense loves blocking tight ends, but that's kind of Brock Wright's job. That's Kenny Yeboah's job. Sam's job is get out in the flats and make those catches, make the fantasy owners happy. I expect a big rebound. I expect north of 10 touchdowns and him to kind of get some more targets. And I would, like I said, I expect big production. I expect over 70 catches and north of 600 yards and north of 10 touchdowns for a supremely talented tight end. You did not bring him here to block for David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs. You brought him here because he can do it all, but his biggest asset is third down situations, moving the chains, and being an offensive target. And sometimes, the coverage will dictate that he doesn't get as many targets, but I think John Morton's first thing that you'll notice is different is that he targets Sam Laporta a lot more.
Doc, and I'm going to ask you, because we broke it down yesterday. I hate the idea of Jaylen Ramsey in a Lions uniform. Your thoughts, Doc? I want the Doc. I want the truth from the Doc. All right. Yeah, what do you think?
I wrote on it. You can check my opinions. You can see.
It was a great article, but I disagree.
Great ideas there. But I think that my final formulation is you do not want Jaylen Ramsey on this team. He's a bad fit character-wise, not a good locker room guy, per people who tell me about how he conducts business. Not good for the media and not good. North of 30 years old. I think the safety position, and plus just based on what's happened from the time he was with the Rams to the Dolphins, he's been a kind of a guy that, in my opinion, paycheck player, took the money and did not develop into what he could have been had he been a little bit more gritty. He's not, if you talk about the Dan Campbell index, he's a -40. So not a good fit. If he's a member of the Lions, I'll be shocked. I'll come out here and apologize that I don't know what I'm doing, but there is no way Jaylen Ramsey will be a member of the Detroit Lions roster. If they do any sort of research, they'll find out pretty quickly. Not the best guy. And he's one of those guys. He's on the Nico plan, which is he makes a great touchdown. He's going to ask to renegotiate his contract. So he's a guy that's all fair. About the money, all about the business, and all about Jaylen Ramsey. And I don't think you need that in this line of work. And I just don't think that the Lions want a guy making north of $20 million as a safety when you can get one in the draft more affordably. And you're going to have two great safeties already in Kirby Joseph and Brian Branch, and you get another one in the draft. Jaylen Ramsey, thumbs down.
Hey, this is a random question because there really hasn't been that much conversation on it. But some reason today I ran across one of his highlights. But Hendon Hooker, where do you see this situation with Hendon Hooker going heading into this year? I know we talked about it maybe a little while back, maybe about a month ago. Do you see there being any update in him kind of potentially, especially with the draft right around the corner, him being maybe involved in a trade, or they kind of look to add another backup as well as I'm drawing a blank on
Kyle Allen. You're
talking about Kyle, yeah. Do you see something happening though there with Hendon Hooker?
Yeah, here's the thing, and it's fun to do that speculation as well. I just don't think that he's got enough experience that the Saints would want him over somebody else, over a draft pick. So I love the idea. I'm the one championing it online. I'm like, yeah, trade him, get something. But the wise people out there are right. You're not going to get a third rounder for him. I'm trying to get a fourth rounder for him. In my projection, when I talked about and wrote about and speculated about him going to the Saints. But realistically, I think he's a Lion. I think and here's the beauty of football. And I think you guys are kind of thinking in the same way I do. If it was me, I would be out there in front of the media and being like, I want to be a starter. Like, I want to go somewhere. Let me go. I've learned from, I'd be out there on a podcast. I'd probably come on this podcast and be like, I want to start. And that's kind of, I was thinking about a question for Brad. I don't think I can word it and phrase it in a way where he's going to give a real answer. But my question is to Brad, how much does Hendon talk about wanting to be a starter? Like, it just feels like he's a backup. He knows he's a backup. He's taken the backup job. Like, I would be a disruptor. Like, I didn't want to be a average podcaster that did a podcast and then have it canceled. I think like some of the guys that started a Lions podcast stopped doing it, which is weird because this is the most interesting time to talk about the Lions. I want to do more. And my schedule just only lets me do it once or twice a week. There's guys that are doing it 5 times a week. There's some guys that started a Lions podcast and stopped doing it. I don't know. Did they lose their viewership? I would be a disruptor. I'd be like, I want to start. I want to be I want to compete for Jared's job. I want to be out there. I don't want to be here anymore. I want to be a player that plays in the National Football League. And after 2 years, you would think that he's got enough to at least start to kind of be a little bit more disruptive. I do think he's hungry to be a starting NFL quarterback. I just don't know if he's got the tools and experience yet. We don't get to see a lot. We just get to see him stretching and early warm-up tosses. But I do think that realistically, outside of being a disruptor and the natural competitive juices that he would have, he probably needs one more year this year with John Morton, learning the offense, learning more about the nuances of an offense. Now, I think the first couple years, you get the terminology, you get the positioning of where the receivers need to go, you get the idea of commanding an offense. Now, this year, it's more about, okay, when you see this, hey, some advanced level processing starts to happen. Like, okay, if Amon-Ra's here in the slot and you see single high safety, when do you shift his motion over here to get him more open? Or when do you go to Laporta in different spots? So some next level development can happen this year. And I do think that Hendon Hooker probably his last year in Detroit is this year. And then if he's a competitor, he's going to need to be like, hey, I don't want to be here. I'm not sitting behind Jared Goff for the next 5 years. He needs to kind of want to disrupt and get after it and be somebody that can start. And I do think he'll get an opportunity, not in Detroit, but I do think that the quarterback position, you got to remember too, in watching other quarterbacks, Aaron Rodgers developed, I think, 3 years sitting behind Brett Favre. And Hendon Hooker is one of those guys. I just think that he's the prototypical backup. But I just think that his mindset needs to be, I need to take a huge step forward in 2025. I would love to trade him, but I don't think no general manager that really wants to keep his job is going to give up anything worthwhile more than a 5th or 6th round pick. And that makes the trade null and void because you drafted him with the 3rd round pick. So I think basically long-winded, he holds the clipboard, but this has to be a productive clipboard year because your time in the NFL is short. You need an opportunity to get out there. And maybe the opportunity presents itself if a team gets an injury in the off season or training camp. Maybe Hendon Hooker ends up not being here, but I expect him to hold the clipboard and be the number 2 this year, all year long. I don't see no veteran coming in. I think that Hendon gets the nod. Otherwise, you have told everybody you made a bad pick in a developmental quarterback. That's not a good sign.
And Doc, with Hendon Hooker and Kyle Allen, Jared Goff, they got depth there. Somewhere where the team is lacking depth for sure is that safety spot. And I look at the Lions right now, they brought in Andrew Makuba, Jonas Sanker out of Virginia. Where do you think and who do you think they kind of bring in with that depth spot? Because I know they have Avonte Maddox, who's a nickel that can play safety, but I would imagine they try to keep him just as depth at that cornerback room. Could throw him at safety. But where do you think and who do you think they get behind Kirby Joseph and Brian Branch this year?
Yeah, I think a lot of my colleagues, which interesting, Christian's really a big fan of Nick Emmanwori from South Carolina, 6'3", 220. Real interesting prospect, could be there. I don't think Malachi Starks will be there at 28. A player to watch that many people thought was on the level of a Travis Hunter was Xavier Watts out of Notre Dame. People like his speed. They like what he can do. He was a consensus All-American the last couple years. And he, I believe, let me look real fast, tied for 2nd in interceptions last year with 6. So that's a ball hawk. So pay attention to him. And then the other name too, because definitely Brad Holmes likes the South, Andrew Mukaba is a player that could be targeted. But I like really, in my opinion, I like the opportunity to draft a safety in this draft and get somebody to have experience, because you have safeties, but they don't have experience. So I like Xavier Watts as the draft crush there, to be somebody that could be ball hawk. That's real nice, because it's tough. And that's the question that is going to be real interesting, because in the model of you can't pay everybody, do you keep Brian Branch and Kirby Joseph? Because it lends to me that Kirby is the dominant safety because of his turnovers. Brian Branch kind of had some discipline problems last year, and I was a little bit surprised at the repeated discipline, uncalled for, unsportsmanlike penalties that he took, the fines that he took. He needs to take a step up this year. I think he will, but it's very rare that teams are going to pay 2 high-end safeties north of $20 million. So to me right now, the leader in the clubhouse of keeping and staying is priority 1 is Kirby, then Brian Branch. But I do think that if Brian Branch has an opportunity to boost his stock even further, good player. I'm not saying I'm not down on Brian Branch, but in terms of if he's a guy that's going to want to break the bank, it's going to be tough. And I look at it right now like Kirby, the interceptions, the ball hawk, the physicality, the way he embraces the game, that's a Detroit Lion. You pay him. Brian Branch got to show a little bit more. And so it's a player, I would say day 2, day 3 at the safety spot, you could find some real good depth and talent.
Doc, we were talking about it earlier, but the game 3 of the Pistons-Knicks series, first game in LCA, is on the same freaking night as the first round of the NFL draft, which, that's going to be interesting for Lions fans attending that game, because everyone in that place will be a Lions fan. But what do you think of that predicament, I guess, for local media when you have the biggest event in sports besides the Super Bowl, and then you have the Pistons in a playoff series?
Yeah. Listen, here's what I'm going to tell everybody to do. Just have your phone, have your laptop at Lions on SI and on Twitter, have it ready. And look, the draft is a fun experience, but here's the perfect part. The Lions, if they stay at 28, are going to be drafting like at 11. So the game should be wrapping up by the time the Lions pick. So you're going to have most of your news. So nowadays, I mean, most people, don't you watch with a big TV and then with a laptop in hand? That's how you do it. And you focus on both. But I think that it stinks that's how it played out, but it's the Pistons in the postseason, hopefully up 2-0 or at worst 1-1 coming back to town. You cheer those people. You give them the respect for having gotten back to the postseason. Look, you can DVR the whole draft if you want to get because all it is a bunch of hugging and talking about, it's not that interesting. Oh, the work, all the hard work I did, and I'm going to be working hard to make my team great. The only thing you want to pay attention to is if the Lions make a trade, but I doubt it. So I think you're free and clear to be able to do both. So it is a dilemma. Vito's going to write about it tomorrow. I can't wait to see his spin on the dilemma, but it is of course, in a time when we want all the attention on the Lions, I beg of you, chat, follow Lions on SI right up until from 7 a.m. up until 8 p.m. Then watch the Pistons, and then keep your Twitter open for alerts from the guys here broadcasting and everything like that as they go through it. But I was like, when I saw the schedule, it is one of those deals where you're like, no, listen, the draft is, listen, Benji, that's awesome that you love the draft that much. I'm of the opinion, I've watched them now 15 years, 7 covering it. It gets boring. It's just, hey, here you write it down. You know who the opponents are going to get. You kind of have a feel. You look for the trade. You look for the shock. I definitely want to see where Travis goes and how far Shedeur drops. Sure, but it doesn't rank higher than the local team that's playing the Knicks. So that's my opinion. So I'll do it. I will be at Allen Park. I'll have the big screen up with the draft that they provide us, and I'll have my phone keeping up to date with the Pistons and following along as well, and cheering and hoping that the Detroit Pistons take out the New York Knicks and the overrated Karl Anthony Towns.
Hey, what's going on there? It's Jeff Iafrate. Appreciate you for finishing the video. You can check out one of the videos here suggested, or show support by commenting, liking, and subscribing. And buy your merchandise, officialctsports.com.